Our I can statement is N12. I can use a calculator to convert between different rational forms. This is day 2, part 2 of our lesson. So if you haven't watched part 1, please go back and watch that first. The steps to convert a decimal to a fraction, we're going to use this as our example, 1.25. Step 1 is to take the whole number and place it in the front. So we're just going to kind of set up our fraction here. We're going to do our fraction bar, and then any whole numbers we're going to place in front. Then we're going to look at the place value of the last digit. So the last digit here in our example, 5, the place value was 100. So we're going to write 100 as our denominator. And then we're going to write those digits that are behind the decimal as our numerator. So since the 2 and the 5 are behind the decimal point, we're going to write 25 above the 100 as our numerator. So this is our decimal in fraction form. But remember, with fractions, we always want to simplify our expressions. We want to find an equivalent fraction that's in simplest form. And in this case, our answer would be 1 1/4. Let's try some practice problems. So for number 1, 0.7. 7 is in the what's place? It's in the tenths place. So I am going to write 10 on the bottom. I'm going to write 7 on the top. Because when we read this decimal, it is saying that there are 7 tenths. Okay? Now, 7 is a prime number. We can't simplify any further. There are no common factors between the numerator and the denominator, so 7 tenths is our final answer. Let's take a look at number 2. I'm going to put the whole number, and any negative signs will also go in front. Okay, the 4 is in the tenths place, so I am going to do 10 on the bottom, and then I'm going to write 4 on the top, so 4 digits on the top. And then I'm going to simplify my expression. I can see that both the 4 and the 10 are even, so at the very least, I know I can always divide the top and bottom by 2. And in fact, that is the greatest common factor that they have. So our final answer would be -2 and 2/5. -2 and 2/5. I want you to try 3 and 4 on your own. And unpause the video when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, the answer for number 3 is -43/100. The final answer for number 4 is 13/25. If you got 52 out of 100, that is our first step, but we do need to simplify and find an equivalent expression. Now let's try using the calculator. These instructions are for the TI-30X2S, but they could work on any similar calculator. So you're going to enter the decimal, then you're going to press the second button and then the PRB button, and the reason why is because it has the fraction to decimal above. So that tells us that it converts between fractions and decimals. And then you'll press enter. That will convert your decimal to a fraction. So you can write the decimal as a fraction using the calculator's fraction to decimal button. So if I type into my calculator, -0.8 second, and then I'm going to press that PRB button. On my screen, I see the arrow after my decimal, and then I see F, and then I see a little arrow D. So if your screen looks something like that, that lets you know that you pressed the right button. If it has a bunch of other stuff, you probably forgot to press the second before the PRB button. So after you press enter, you get in the calculator -4/5. And this is our final answer. The calculator simplifies it for you. Go ahead and try 6, 7, and 8 on your own, and then start the video up when you're ready to check your answers. The answer for number 6 is 19/25. The answer for number 7 is 1 7/20. And I just want to remind you that anytime you see in the calculator that little U symbol, that like this. That's like a space in between the whole number part and the fraction part. So just remember when you write it on your paper, you don't need to include that little U space. That you just write it like the fraction like normal. And then number 8 is -2 2/5. All right. If we have a percentage and we want to convert it to a decimal, remember that 25% means 25 per or over 100. So the first step is to write it as a fraction over 100. The next step, remember this is kind of undoing what we learned in the previous lesson, we're going to divide the top and bottom by 100 because that's going to get our denominator to become 1. Once our denominator is 1, then we can just write the numerator by itself, 0.25, which is our decimal. So the top numbers are decimal. Now, what you should notice as you compare the original 25% with our decimal, 0.25, is that our shortcut is that we can move the decimal over 2 places to the left to take a percent and make it a decimal. So, first, for number 9, we're going to write the percent as a decimal. So we're going to move the decimal over 2 spaces. So I get 0.5. Then on my paper, I'm going to write that percent as a fraction. Okay? So that's going to be 5/10 or 1/2. And for some of these, you might even know those equivalents. I know, for example, I have it memorized that 0.5 is the same or equivalent to 1/2. And so if you know those fraction equivalencies, you can jump right there. Let's try number 10. So I'm going to move the decimal over 2 spaces. So I get 0.48. When I'm writing this as a fraction, that's going to be 48 over 100 because the 8 is in the hundredths place. And then I know I can do some simplifying. So if I divide the top and bottom by a common factor, I get 12 over 25 because I divided the top and bottom by 4. Go ahead and pause now while you work on 11 and 12 on your own and start it up again when you're ready to check your answers. All right, number 11 is 1.1, which is 1 1/10 as a fraction. Number 12 is negative 0.38, which simplifies to negative 19/50ths. All right, this story problem talks about red snapper, which is a type of fish. So you caught a red snapper that is 8 5/12 inches long. Your friend caught a red snapper that is 8 6/13 inches long. Who caught the larger red snapper? So I'm just going to organize my information. I caught the fish that was 8 5/12. My friend caught one that was 8 6/13. Now, since it's asking which one is bigger, and I notice that the whole number part for both of them is 8, the only part that I really need to compare is the fraction part. Okay, I need to figure out which fraction part is bigger. So I'm going to type into my calculator 5 divided by 12. And that gives me 0.41 with the 6 repeated. Okay? And remember, some of you may be thinking, well, it has 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, but it has a 7 at the end. Remember, that's our calculator rounding up for us. It is 4.16 repeated. Okay? Then I'm going to type into my calculator 6 divided by 13, and I get 0.461. So when I compare, the 4's are equal, so that doesn't tell me which one's bigger. But when I compare the 1 and the 6 is definitely bigger. So I need to make sure that I include for my final answer that my friend caught the larger snapper. So that's my answer in a complete sentence. All right. Let's try another story problem. At basketball practice, Charlie makes 52 baskets out of 80 shots. What percentage of baskets did he make? So we're going to write 52 as our numerator, that's the number on top. 80 as our denominator, that's the number on bottom. And this is going to be very similar to the way you might find the percentage you got correct on a test. So the number you got correct out of the total number of points. This could also work when we do our flashcards. The number of cards you get correct out of the total number of cards in the deck. So I can type into my calculator 52 divided by 80, and I get 0.65. Now, I'm not done yet. Remember that it's asking for a percentage. So, since I have a decimal, I'm going to move the decimal over 2 spaces to the right to give me 65%. So that's my final answer for this problem. On these last sets of problems, the directions say order the numbers from least to greatest. And I have a mixture of fractions and decimals. Now, you might have some of these equivalents memorized, but if you don't, the first step is to take each of the fractions and convert them to a decimal. And the reason for that is it's a lot easier to compare decimals to decimals than it is fractions and decimals. Okay, so if I type into my calculator 2 divided by 3, I'm going to get 0.6 repeated, and I want to make sure and I include that negative sign there. Okay, now I can go ahead and order them from least to greatest. I'm going to start with the most negative numbers first, and so in this case, since negative 0.6 repeated is bigger than negative 0.5, and by bigger, I mean most negative, we're going to write it first, but we want our final answer to have those original numbers. So I'm going to have negative 2/3, then negative 0.5, and then last I'll finish up with my one positive value, 1.6. So this is my final answer for this problem. For number 19, 4/3 is the same as 1.3 repeated. And you can check that on your calculator by typing in 4 divided by 3. Now there's only one negative number, so that one's got to come first, negative 0.3. So then I'm going to compare my two positive values. And 1.3 is bigger than 1.2. So 1.2 has got to come next, and then my final value is 4/3. Okay, remember I'm always going back to those original fractional numbers. I'm just using the decimal to help me to figure out the order and the comparison. Hopefully that video was helpful in helping you to see conversions from percents to decimals and decimals to fractions. Remember, you can watch it as many times as you need to and pause and re-listen along the way if you need. Thanks for watching.